Good afternoon, everyone. If you're on the East Coast, if you're on the West Coast, late morning. We're going to go ahead and get started here in just a minute. We're going to let people go ahead and join the call. We're going to be recording this webinar so that you can share with your colleagues. JB, 25 years. I've been with the company for a little over 15. So I asked JB to hop on in case there were any technical questions about our server product and our other products, and hopefully we'll be able to get those answered for you. What I wanted to do was really start off just with a couple of slides today. I think I have a total of four with any content. So we're going to try to keep this short, and what we wanted to do when we were at the ESRI conference is nice, first of all, to have everyone back in person. I don't think it was as busy as it has been in the past. It's the first time Terrago has actually been has represented at the ESRI conference in probably about 6 or 7 years. So it was a great opportunity to reconnect with old colleagues and customers and partners. So thought it was a great event. I know some people may or may not have had budget to attend, but what we wanted to do was just briefly go through some of the technology that we showed. We had a lot of positive feedback from our latest releases of our Geo Pdf publisher for Arcgis Pro and our server product. There was some interest on our 3D side as well. And if you're interested in creating 3D Geo PDFs, just make sure you send a note. Unfortunately, Madison, who normally manages all of the logistics for us for these events, is traveling today, so she couldn't be in attendance. But I wanted to bring your attention. Everybody is probably familiar with Zoom by now after the past couple of years. There's a chat option. And if you'll go ahead, there's a chat and a Q&A option. If you'll go ahead and put in any questions that you might have, we'll try to monitor that as best as we can. If we're not able to get to all the questions, I'd like to try to keep this to 30 minutes. I know everybody's busy. It is a Wednesday, which is a busy day for everybody. But we'll go ahead and get started. I wanted to kind of give you just an idea of how things have been going, just from a business standpoint, and how we're doing in the geospatial space. So hopefully everyone is familiar with GeoPdf. I'll open up a couple and show you some of the tools that are available. But as we have our understanding now, physical events have started again. I think I saw one virtual event invitation this morning come across my inbox. So events are in place again. These are just some of the attended since the last ESRI conference, or over the past year, if you will. We do a lot of business at Terrago within the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. A lot of our federal civilian customers as well. So the ESRI conference itself wasn't a DoD specific or intel community specific. GeoInt is, that was held in Denver. So we were out to visit with our customers and partners and friends out there in Denver. And then obviously the ESRI user conference is more commercially focused. So we have a lot of really good dialogue there. Again, the DoD and the IC focused. We recently, 2 weeks ago, attended the U.S. Space Force and U.S. Air Force Service Day in Herndon, and that's put on by an organization called USGIF, if you're unfamiliar. They help manage the GeoInt conference, and they have several working groups and things that Terrago participates in, so that we can kind of keep our fingers on the pulse of the DoD, the IC, but we're not exclusive to those folks. We also attended the Special Operations Conference in Tampa. For the first time, we attended the Geospatial World Forum in Amsterdam. We didn't exhibit there because we had never attended, but a couple of our colleagues out that are actually in the Netherlands attended that in our stead. Our international business has grown exponentially over the past year. And a lot of that is due to the DGI conference. It's a defense geospatial conference held in London every year in January, February. So a lot of big users, prefer not to say specifics, but a lot of European counterparts have started to or continue to increase their abilities to create GeoPDF products. One of our flagship partners is BAE Systems. We work very closely with them in integrating our technology into the GXP platform itself. The Socket GXP platform, their data management tool, which is Explorer, which if you're unfamiliar with, is state-of-the-art data management. And I really encourage you to look out at the GXP Explorer product. They hold a conference in San Diego every year post pandemic, of course. And that takes place in March, April. We have a very large contingent of users in the US DoD, so there is an engineering working group that's held every year out in Fort Leonard Wood, and then the Geo Week event, both at Fort Leonard Wood and then in Denver as well. So we've been spread pretty thin. If you didn't know, we're a small force of about 50 that work on both sides of our business. The GeoPDF side of the business is smaller, but just to give you an idea, we're about 90% engineers and development. So if you're unfamiliar, I'm gonna show you a slide toward the end about our smart cities and IoT business. But if you're involved in any of that sort of activity inside of your organization, I highly encourage you to have a look at our website, and that's terragotech.com. If you want to go specifically to the GeoPDF side of the business, you go to terragotech.com and then /defense. We continue our work with USGIF. As I said, if you are in the DoD or the intelligence community, they do a fantastic job. Rhonda Schreck over there is running the show, and she just does a fantastic job with USGIF and bringing industry and users of geospatial technology together. There are additional service days that are taking place for the Navy and the Coast Guard and the Marine Corps on the 19th of October that we'll be attending. It's going to be at the NGA Campus East, or NCE, in Springfield. And then early next year on the 9th of February, there'll be another service day specifically for the Army, and that's going to be held at NGA as well. One thing I'd like to bring up is virtual events are always available for anyone on this call, any person that's interested in any aspect of the technology. I like to do webinars at least once a quarter. Sometimes I did one last week actually with a user group of the Geospatial PDF and GeoPDF working group. So, but virtual events for training and education are always available. We do have a lot of resources available on our website and on our YouTube channel as well. So I encourage you to go there. I'd like to talk just briefly about the product. A big push inside of the organization has been our compatibility with Arcgis Pro. There's a big transition going on in the space from regular ArcGIS Desktop over to Arcgis Pro. It's a significant change, so a lot of people are slow rolling that transition. And Esri is, I believe, they are going to be supporting ArcGIS Desktop until 2027. So there is another 5 years that remain on supporting that product. In that time, we like Esri are trying to roll all of our functionality that's desired from the industry and the community into our GeoPDF publisher for ArcGIS Pro. We've actually done at least four releases in the past year. The current version is compatible with version 2.6 and 2.9 of ArcGIS Pro. We're working on 3.0, but there are some significant changes in compatibility with version 3.0. I just spoke to one of our other engineers, and we're making progress on being able to deliver an estimated time to market for you all. Right now it's 2.9, and I actually have not updated to 3.0 yet myself. So what I'm going to be showing you, I think I'm actually on 2.8 of ArcGIS Pro. Our GeoPDF publisher for ArcGIS and ArcGIS Server, we just did another release of that. It's currently version 10.8.2 and or 7.8.2 with support for ArcGIS Desktop and Server to 10.8.2. I believe that may be a little dated on the slide. I believe we do support 10.8.3 on the desktop for sure. Something that is really big news and has been a very heavy lift for Terrago over the past couple of years is being compatible with Adobe's version or 64-bit version. I'm really happy to say the engineers just really busted their tails, and that is now available. But there was a huge lift to be compatible with the 64-bit version of Adobe. And it does include the ability to create 3D Geo PDFs. Again, if you're interested in seeing that capability, that technology, I'll be happy to get online with you, your colleagues, or just if you'd like to see another webinar with the 3D capabilities, we're happy to do that. We did just release a new version of our SDK as well. So there's a lot of work that goes into just a couple of new capabilities. Some of our customers have requested the ability to handle metadata and create their own metadata in their GeoPDF files. One of those customers actually being our business partner, BAE Systems. So it makes it easier for them to actually archive their products after they're created and store them inside of that Explorer environment and make them discoverable to all of the other users that have access to Explorer. And what you actually have is a finished product that's already made. One of the great things that we are doing is working to embed GeoPackage inside of those tools as well at BAE. That's another lift that involves the SDK, but we are working toward some more advanced functionalities for the GeoPDF product out of stock at GXP. The steady rhythm and cadence continues across the products. The focus, we really are focusing right now on our GeoPDF publisher for Arcgis Pro. So those same tools are going to be available for those users that are traditionally familiar with the desktop environment. We do have a release pending in the next month or so of our GeoPDF publisher for Raster. So that tool set itself just lets you take Geotiff products, the IMGs, NITFs, Mr. SIDS, ADRG, some other military formats, and actually convert them directly to GeoPDF. It's a standalone tool. If you have a library of raster data that you want to be able to share with a huge contingent of users, it's quite simple to be able to just identify an input, an output, a couple of preferences on what kind of compression you'd like to see, what kind of dots per inch you'd like to see, and then actually push that data out. Again, it's a GeoPDF, so anyone who has the free Adobe Reader can look at it. If they have our free toolbar that goes into Adobe Reader, they can look at coordinates, take measurements, add their own content directly on top of the product as well. So when we do that release, I will go ahead and set up a new webinar for that GeoPDF publisher for Raster. It's been used, you can imagine the organizations that have libraries and libraries of Raster content, and they just want to for the Raster product. The democratization of imagery, satellite imagery, aerial photography has already taken place, and we don't have enough eyeballs either in the government or probably even inside of a larger organization, not as big as the government, but to actually look at all of that imagery. So we can convert it to GeoPDF and just give them that capability just out of the gate. In Adobe Reader, it doesn't cost them anything to view. They don't have to have a big system. They can just use the same type of laptop that I'm working on right here. So that's just a quick product update. We generally try to provide four releases per product per year. So if you are a customer, I hope you're getting the value with your support and maintenance. If you are not a customer, that gives you an idea of what you can expect. I can't guarantee 4 releases every year. We're a small team, and we do have a little bit heavier focus, excuse me, a heavier focus on Arcgis Pro right now. I wanted to briefly bring up, because when we were at the Esri conference, it's a lot of state and local government and environmental organizations and people who really need to manage assets. They were quite interested in our ability to on field operations. What we have are mobile applications that are customized for an organization. It only takes us a couple of days to turn around an application for a group of end users. And then we have a piece of geospatial data management middleware, if you will. It's a server-based technology, and it's software as a service to kind of glue all of the different pieces of field operations back to back office. One of some great success stories, obviously, is 8 of the 10 largest utilities now use TerraGo's technology and our mobile applications to connect to not only a GIS system, but also an asset management system, a work order management system, all kinds of other back office programs. If you're familiar with Salesforce, we've done integrations there. And we have installation modules, inventory modules, maintenance modules, an analytics module. And again, I encourage you to go. It's not just smart streetlights that we manage. We're also getting other assets under management as well. You see over 3 million smart streetlights are under TerraGo's management right now. And I can't really break down from 8 of those 10 largest U.S. utilities, but there, as you can imagine, in a city like Chicago and all of the initiatives for IoT and having smart assets, obviously that is a huge benefit, a huge amount of return on investment that are being received by these state and local organizations. And if you're interested, please don't hesitate reaching out to me or to our sales or info@terragotech.com. So that's just a quick summary on our smart cities and utilities business. The next slide, I just wanted to let you know how the easiest way to get in touch with us. Obviously, you have my email address, and please feel free to contact me at any time. My colleague Joe Abuela and I will be happy to follow up and get you any additional information that you would need. There is a lot of information that we put out on LinkedIn as well, Twitter and YouTube. So we have a couple of people that help us manage our social media activity. So that generally stays up to date. And the last thing that I'm going to say on this slide is that we are hiring. So if you know anyone that has these types of skill sets, please reach out to us or contact careers@terragotech.com. Again, it's a small group, but we're super laser focused on being able to deliver the solutions that we can for both our smart cities and utilities business, as well as our GeoPdf side of the business. Everything, just to close that up, they are 2 business units, but they both work together. So on the smart cities and utilities, they create mobile applications that can work with products like our GeoPdf or Geotiff or whatever the case may be. And alternatively, the data or the applications that are being developed today by that side of the business are going to be able to be used for our GeoPdf customers. So with that, and that was probably a little bit longer than what I wanted to run on the slides, but again, here's my contact information. My phone number, that's my mobile, so you can shoot me a text, just let me know who you are, or shoot me an email. You can also get in touch with me on LinkedIn as well, so love to connect. All right, let's see, let's go ahead and what I wanted to do was just give a couple of quick demonstrations. Again, I'm going to try to keep this within 30 minutes. I wanted you to be able to see an example of an instance of our GeoPdf publisher for Arcgis server. A lot of you have portal or server already up and running, and the end user actually needs to be able to extrapolate some content from that. I mean, we want to share all of our data, but they want to be able to extrapolate content and then be able to use it quite possibly in an offline environment or on a mobile application. So there is a mobile application available on the App Store and the Play Store to handle GeoPdf products. It's free. It'll let your constituents see their location on the GeoPdf, add points, lines, polygons in a very intuitive way, and then export that data back as a PDF so that you can get that information completely digitally and bring it back into your enterprise. So this is just a quick sample. I'm going to show you what areas we actually have. We don't have the entire area around DC, but in most of DC proper, you'll see their content. This is just all of the buildings that we have, and this is all open source data. It's always great to be able to share this type of content with your users and validate what it is that you're actually doing with your data and your content. So I'm going to zoom in to a little bit of a smaller area here, and we'll go right around the White House just so that everybody has an idea or is familiar, generally speaking, to this area. I only have the buildings on. You'll notice up here, it's a little bit gray and might be a little bit difficult to see, but I only have the buildings turned on here. I would like to turn on some streets here. And so you have a couple of options. This is just our software implemented inside of a server environment, relatively easy to implement. I mean, we're talking maybe a couple of days, and then give users the ability to actually export a GeoPDF. Now, when they export the GeoPDF, there are a couple of options when you want to embed attribute information inside of the product as well. And so we do this a couple of different ways. We very highly encourage the use of GeoPackage, just because we do not run into any limitations when you are trying to export your attribute information. Adobe has a hard limit on how many attributes for a feature you can actually embed inside of the product. And that hard limit, I believe, is 32,000. But you can quickly, as you can imagine, you can quickly run into 32,000 different fields that can be embedded inside of the PDF. What I'd like to do here is just go ahead and select GeoPackage, and then all your constituent has to do is just they choose the layers that they want to see, identify how they want to pass across the attributes, and this can all be customized. Of course, it doesn't have to be across the top. We can move all of that around, or help you move it all around, and then export the GeoPDF. It shouldn't take that long because we're in a relatively small area. We'll let that go ahead and finish here. In just a second. So it's already completed. I'm going to download that to my system here, and I'm going to call this server sample 4. And go ahead and pull that up and show you what your output product actually looks like. So here now in server sample 4, some of the other things I'd like to be able to share with you are file sizes, because these things are extremely small, 6 megabytes, but it also has all of the attribute information embedded inside of it, if you remember, for all of the buildings and all of the roads. I can, of course, turn features on and off. I wanted to turn off the streets, I can turn off the streets. And there's really no limit into the number of layers that you can have in here. It's just however your MXD is set up, is kind of what is going to be delivered to the end user. So again, it's a GeoPDF. So as I move around in the map, if you can see my cursor right over the White House, you'll see the coordinate information in the bottom right-hand corner changes. Okay. Now, these are the 2 free toolbars that come with our GeoPDF toolbar. It is, and I'm actually using the 64-bit version of Adobe now. So you'll see over here, if I can move this, I'm actually in the 64-bit version. As I move around and use that GeoPDF toolbar, I can select an individual point and actually freeze that coordinate. So if I needed to pass a specific coordinate over to someone over the phone or whatever the case may be, I can also right click and do a Google Map it. So here in this instance, I don't have imagery as a backdrop, but if I wanted to see what the imagery looked like as a backdrop, we pass that via JavaScript directly into a browser. And then now I can zoom in and actually see the imagery for the White House. Well, it's actually pretty tightly referenced, actually. You'll see I'm just left of center at the White House. And then here, I'm just left of center at the White House as well. So a nice capability. Some of our users had a hard time getting that capability embedded in the toolbar or having access to it. So also when you right click, you can just copy that link to Google Maps to a clipboard or copy the coordinates to a clipboard. There's always more than one way to access the data or access a function, right? So you can also do measurements directly from this capability. Everyone doesn't always work in the same coordinate system, right? So now a user actually has access to different coordinate systems. If they didn't want to work in WGS84 Web Mercator, then I can change the coordinate system, and we support 3,275 different ones. So there's a huge list, especially if you're sharing data with someone maybe across a state line or across a country boundary. You can share that content, and they can look at the coordinate information in a familiar projection. So those are just a couple of the tools. Now I spoke about this identify tool. That identify tool is the same function as what is inside ArcGIS. So if I want to see the information about one of these individual buildings here, I'm going to actually access that information from a Geo package. So that is a SQLite database that is embedded inside of the PDF automatically, and all of your users will have access to that information. I'm just going to click on the Treasury Department building here. Let's see. Here is the identify function. I'm going to select on the Treasury building, and here you'll see all of the details that came from the GIS into all of the attributes into the Geo package, which is attached to the PDF. Likewise on the White House, the East Wing, the West Wing, any one of these buildings that are here. Okay, and this is all open source content, so it's not extremely feature rich, but you do have the ability, obviously, to pull down the Geo database and be able to bring that in our GIS, and then we make it all available. There are measurement tools. Excuse me. There are measurement tools for measuring linear areas. So the distance from wing to wing is 256 meters. We do handle imperial units as well. That's just a preference, and I can go into more detail there if needed. But we can also measure areas. So if we wanted to see how big this block actually was that the White House is located in, then you get 104,000 square meters. So a pretty nice tool. The purpose of all of this is to make, we want to help make your constituents a little more geospatially savvy, if you will. So they'll have questions about certain data or about an individual feature, or want to know what the distance is between point X and point Y. So what we're trying to do is just impart some fundamental geospatial concepts to the end user to help them be more productive and not have to ask so many questions. We don't mind answering questions, but some of them could easily be understood with a Geo PDF or answered with a Geo PDF. So there's also a Geotrack function. I'm located in Atlanta, so it's not going to pop up here, but it'll use Windows 10 location services on your machine. So if you're working out in a laptop, it'll actually show you red X or red crosshairs of where you're located on the Geo PDF itself. Just real quick, I wanted to show you the Geomark functionality as well. So this lets users actually go out and create their own content on top of the PDF. Again, I'm in Adobe Reader, so I'm just going to draw an X or a box around the White House. I could add polygons, multiverse polygons, a polyline, just a point-to-point line. We also embed stamps inside of the toolbar. So if I wanted to say this is, let's say there's an explosive that's been reported, and it'll drop that explosive right there. Now you can resize all of these as well. The anchor point is the top left, just as a heads up. So I'm going to just select that, double click, and I'll start to be able to add attributes. If you see this Geomark editor, I can actually add attributes directly to that. General attributes, freeform text. There is some data creation, so you would have a chain of custody, if you will, for any markups that were done. And then you just ask your end users to go ahead and save the PDF and send it back to you. And then you can go directly into the collaboration tool set. Let's make sure I have my preferences there, right? Yep. You can go into the collaboration function here at the far right-hand side and actually export those geomarks. And I'm going to throw these on my desktop. And I'm going to call this Scott. And I can save this as a KML or as a shapefile, so I can get that information directly back into the Esri environment. I'm going to show this just as a KML, just because it's quick and I think it shows pretty well. And then go back to my desktop here. Let's see. Scott. So now I double click on that KML file. Obviously, the KML is going to be extremely small. Let's see if we can get the properties of this thing too. It's just got 3 kilobytes. So easy to share that information as well. One of the other things you can do, if somebody creates a KML, you can actually, or you create a KML for someone, they can open that KML directly inside of the Geopdf too. So we're really focused again on making sure that your constituent base becomes a little more geospatially savvy, more productive. But we also, the real focus is on spatial collaboration so that we can start to easily share spatial content peer-to-peer, end user to geospatial analyst or imagery analyst or geospatial analyst back to a user community. And they can do something productive. I mean, the reality is we would like everyone to be extremely savvy with the GIS environment or the remote sensing environment. But the fact is that there are way too many people to be able to train on all of those features and functions. Now, things are changing. Obviously, every time you look at a map on TV, there are attributes behind everything. People are starting to understand what's going on from a spatial perspective. And they can do something with that data themselves now as a GeoPdf. So I'm going to close this guy out. And I wanted to quickly hop into Arcgis Pro. So just the standard environment, I see there is a question. I'm going to get to that as soon as I finish this portion of the demo. Same basic area of Washington, D.C. I have a few more features turned on here. So there was a huge rewrite to be able to be compatible with Arcgis Pro. And then there's another major effort that's going on with the conversion to 3.0. We are getting closer. And again, like I said, I'll have some dates for you guys soon. This is the TerraGo ribbon. So there is an about dialogue. If you have questions and you try to get in touch with our support group or get in touch with me, then they're going to ask you, or we're going to ask you for versions. There's a support line that you can get in touch with us. All of our help documentation is now online. So anything that you need to know about what the requirements are for the technology, maybe how to do a couple of things, exporting. There were a lot of things that were done in Arcgis Pro to make it easier to access your log files. There are different environments that you can set up inside of Arcgis Pro. There's a light mode and a dark mode, so we had to do some things like that, working in that environment. Adding support for 3D scenes, support for raster mosaics, etc. So if you have any questions, download an evaluation version. If you want a fully functioning evaluation version, I'll be happy to get you a license code cut as well. But just to run through this real quick, there are some preferences that are set up here. If you do not change any of the other information across these next two sections of the dialogue, then this will be the default, just to let you know. I did change some of the resolution information. We did some other enhancements to optimize your Geopdf file size. Some of the other things on pre-pending pages and the pending pages. So if I wanted to put a PDF document in front of the map, I can do that. Also, if I want to put something on the end of the map, I can do that. So you can actually create your own briefing tool if you would like. Your PowerPoint probably gets changed to a PDF file just to lock it down. This is a good way to send a briefing material directly across to someone, is to add information, textual content in the front, textual content in the back, maybe a PowerPoint, maybe a spreadsheet, etc. Here's where you would manipulate your layers or identify which layers you want to come across. By default, everything's going to go across that I have selected. Let me drag this imagery across as well. So you do have options on layering features and labels independently, or you could automatically choose the layers. Let me move this guy out of the way. Or you can auto-populate. There are some other nice to haves in here. This is the attributes tab where we embed content into the geo package. So we only support geo package now out at the current time under Arcgis Pro. That does necessitate the requirement for the Geopdf toolbar. So if your users want to be able to look at the attribute information coming out of this Geopdf out of Arcgis Pro, they will need to have the free Geopdf toolbar. And then we also support pop-ups, which were traditionally hyperlinks and attachments. So I don't have any hyperlinks in this example. After you're finished setting up your configuration and everything the way that you want to see the data, you just hit export. And so it'll run through the process. And I'm going to just leave that name the same. This is going to take a couple of minutes to actually push out, but you will be able to view the Geopdf after the export is complete. This will take a couple of minutes. What I'd like to do now is there's one question. So let's see here. Can you embed or play video? So you have video link tied to an attribute of a point. Can it play? Yep. If it's inside of Arcgis, then if you have that hyperlink or that video embedded, we can. That's handled through the pop-ups. And I do have a sample of the St. Louis area where we have a lot of pop-ups. I would dig around, prolong the agony of me trying to filter through my file system if I try to find it. But Chris, if you want to send me an email, I can get that sample across to you. You just use the identify tool that is in the Adobe Reader again to where you view the attributes here, and then again here is the identify tool, and you would use that to select the hyperlink. I'm pretty sure how that is how it works. So any other questions right now? That is it. So this process, again, it takes a couple of minutes, but I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. I've already run over about 10. We'll go ahead and see if this thing will create, and I'll show you the product with multiple layers. We will set you free. Again, here's my contact information, Chris, and feel free to email, text, or however you'd like to get in touch. Another thing to bring up is a lot of people are using the map series tool inside of Arcgis Pro. Our export works completely with that as well. So you can export multiple map sheets simultaneously, just kick it off, when you leave the office or just log in remotely to your VM, and you'll be able to create products to multiple map sheets. We also have, there's a reference to our Geopdf Composer in the toolbar. This is this Composer tool for Adobe Acrobat lets you aggregate all of those disparate map sheets into one comprehensive map book. Again, if you're interested in seeing how that works, let me know, and we can do a one-on-one, or if you think your organization would like just a full technology stack review, we'll be happy to do that as well. All right, so the export is complete. Open the Geopdf. We're going to say yes. And so now here we have another example of the Geo Pdf. So now I have imagery. I can turn that data on and off, the buildings, etc. I did embed attributes inside of this again. So just real quick, if I select the identify tool, I can select on any one of these features again, and I will get all of the attributes. So the attributes will come across either out of Arcgis Pro, out of your standard Arcgis desktop, or out of Arcgis server, and you give someone not only the physical representation of the data that you're viewing or that they want to view, but you also give them access to the data. That geo package can obviously be opened inside of the GIS environment, like Arcgis, or inside of Socket GXP, for example. So with that, we do have another question. Are you tied only to Arcgis? Can you create GeoPDFs from QGIS? That would be available with our SDK. The tool set would probably not be as completely robust. Our SDK has the high level capabilities, and we can talk about that if that's something you're interested in. Arc Pro is PC only, yes. And from a Linux perspective, I do not think we are compatible with Linux. From the anonymous attendee, will a recording of this be made available? Yes, absolutely. So I'll share the slides with you that have my contact information. We'll wrap up the recording here in just a couple of minutes, and then we will also make that available to all of the registrants and the attendees. Again, if you, that'll take us a couple of days. Madison's out on travel, and she and another couple of people help me facilitate getting all of this stuff publicly available. But just let me know if you want it sooner, and I'll make sure that you have that available. Okay, with that, again, thanks for attending. I tried to keep it to 30 minutes. Looks like we ran to 40, but if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me again. And I'm located on the East Coast, but available just about any time during the day or night. So thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Appreciate you attending. And we're going to go ahead and close this up.